Welcome to my series of basketball videos where I'll be comparing various NBA greats against each other. I'm doing this because I find that a lot of the basketball videos comparing players on YouTube are too focused on the big names and sometimes compare players from different positions. Lots of people compare Jordan to LeBron and Kobe to Duncan, for example, due to their similar levels of achievements, but since those players play different positions and have different styles of play, it's not an interesting comparison. In this series, I want to do comparisons between not just more well-known players, but players from days past, in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and the ABA as well, that most modern fans probably do not have too much knowledge about. Also, as much as possible, I want to compare players that play similar positions and/or similar play styles. To me, that's a more interesting and fruitful comparison. I'll be using 8 different metrics to judge each player. Scoring. This category will be defined by each player's career points per game, peak points per game, both regular season and playoffs, and number of scoring titles. Rebounding. This category will be defined by each player's career rebounds per game, peak rebounds per game, both regular season and playoffs, and number of rebounding titles. Passing. This category will be defined by each player's career assists per game, peak assists per game, both in regular season and playoffs, and number of assist titles. Efficiency advanced metrics. This category will be defined by each player's career true shooting percentage, PER, and win shares per 48. Reason I use true shooting percentage is because it's more fair to guards. Defense. This category will be defined by each player's all defensive selections, defensive win shares, and defensive player of the year awards. The reason I'm not using blocks, steals, or defensive box plus minus is because I want to compare the achievements of older players that modern fans might not have too much knowledge about, and players in the 1960s and early 1970s do not have these stats tracked. Awards. This category will be defined by all-star appearances, all-NBA selections, MVPs, finals MVPs, and championships as a top 3 player. The reason I have to count championships as a top 3 player on the team is because otherwise you'll get into the situation where, for example, Robert Horry has 7 rings and Karl Malone has 0, and it's not representative of how much better a player is if you weren't a top 3 player on that team contributing to a championship. Also, I'll be including ABA stats and awards and using them equivalent to their respective NBA stats and awards. Also, no All-NBA third team selections are included because All-NBA third teams weren't added until the late 1980s, which is unfair to older players. Playoffs. This category will be defined by how many Eastern Conference Finals or Western Conference Finals and Finals a player has been to, and how many championships they won as a top 3 player on the team. Yes, this is supplementary to the awards category because it also rewards players for making it far in the playoffs, even if they don't necessarily win at all. Totals. This category will be defined by longevity, how many total points, rebounds, assists, and win shares a player has accumulated throughout their career, and rewards a player's durability. After all, a lot of people say the best ability is availability. And of course, this is only going to be my opinion from comparing the available metrics, since I've not watched most of these players live or even been born when some of these players have been playing. And to keep it fair, I'm judging them based on how they did in their own era. There's no comparing what this NBA player played in today's era or the 1960s, none of that. It'll be strictly based on their stats and accomplishments within their own era against that era's competition, which makes the most sense to me. So I hope you guys enjoy this comparison video and hopefully learn something new from it. In the 38th episode in the series, we take a look at 2 all-time Hall of Fame big men who are underrated and impactful players for their franchises. Pau Gasol is known as one of the greatest European players of all time, a talented power forward and center who had a significant impact on both the Memphis Grizzlies and the LA Lakers, ultimately winning 2 championships on the Lakers alongside his close friend Kobe Bryant. Alonzo Mourning is a Miami Heat legend, a powerful, tough defensive center who never quite got to win a championship in his prime, but eventually ended up with one in the twilight of his career. So who had the greater career, Gasol or Zoe? Let's find out. In the scoring category, both players had near identical career points per game numbers. Gasol averaged 17 points per game for his career, peaking at 20.8 points per game in 2007, and 15.4 points per game in the playoffs, peaking at 21.3 points per game in 2005. Zoe averaged a very similar 17.1 points per game for his career, peaking at 23.2 points per game in 1996, and 13.6 points per game in the playoffs, peaking at 23.8 points per game in 1993. Although Zoe had slightly higher peak numbers, it's not really enough to give him an edge, as both players are very skilled and talented scorers from the low post and the paint. Neither player were dominant scorers to carry a team to the finals, but both could be relied upon to provide some offensive firepower when their teams needed them. This category is a bit too close to call, and thus I'll have to call it a tie. In the rebounding category, this one is also fairly close. Gasol averaged 9.2 rebounds a game for his career, peaking at 11.8 rebounds per game in 2015, and 9.2 rebounds per game in the playoffs, peaking at 11.5 rebounds per game in 2013. Zoe averaged 8.5 rebounds a game for his career, peaking at 11 boards a game in 1999, and 7 rebounds a game in the playoffs, peaking at 13.3 rebounds a game in 1995. Although Gasol has slightly higher averages, their peaks are actually quite similar, and it's not really enough to give him an edge, as both players are very good rebounders in general and can be relied upon to grab some boards when their team needed it the most. Mourning used his strength and toughness to box out opposing centers, while Gasol used his excellent positioning skills and height to outmaneuver opposing big men. This is yet another category where it's just too close to call, and thus I'll have to call this one a tie as well. In the passing category, it's definitely not that close. Gasol averaged 3.2 assists per game for his career, peaking at 4.6 a game in 2006, and 3.2 assists per game in the playoffs, peaking at 6.5 assists per game in 2013. Zoe averaged only 1.1 assists per game for his career, peaking at 2.3 per game in 1996, and 0.9 assists per game in the playoffs, peaking at 2.8 a game in 1995. Zoe played more as a traditional center, mostly receiving feeds in the paint and rarely passed back out, while Gasol was a naturally gifted and unselfish passer and became even better within Phil Jackson's triangle offense. In fact, Gasol's career assists per game is higher than Zoe's peak assists per game, giving you an idea of how versatile Gasol was as a big man. Thus, this category will easily go to Pau Gasol. In the efficiency and advanced metrics category, it's very close, as both players were very efficient scorers and always took high percentage shots near the basket. Zoe had a higher true shooting percentage, but not by very much, and both have similar PER and win shares per 40 as well, which are both very impressive and reflect their underrated impact on their teams. This category is also too close to call, and thus I'll have to call it a wash. In the defense category, it's interesting because Gasol might be one of the most underrated defenders of his era. Gasol was actually quite a valuable rim protector and defensive anchor for the late 2000s Lakers. However, Zoe is known as one of the greatest rim protectors ever. Although not quite up to the level of Hakeem Olajuwon or Dikembe Mutombo, Zoe was right after them. And as soon as Hakeem and Mutombo declined a bit, Zoe won 2 Defensive Player of the Years in a row, was named All-Defensive First Team twice in a row, and led the league in blocks twice in a row. Zoe was known as the best defensive big man in between the Hakeem Mutombo years and the Ben Wallace years, and thus this category will go to him. In the awards category, both players have a similar number of All-Star and All-NBA selections. However, Gasol was a top 2 player in both of his championship runs with the LA Lakers, whereas Zoe's championship came when he was a role player coming off the bench. Thus, Gasol's championships are more valuable, and thus he will get the win in this category. In the playoffs category, although Zoe reached an Eastern Conference Finals in his prime and a Finals in his twilight years, Gasol reached 3 Finals in a row in his prime and another Western Conference Finals in his twilight years, thus this one will easily go to Pau Gasol. In the longevity category, Zoe had health issues that caused him to miss several seasons, whereas Gasol played mostly healthy his entire career. Thus, it isn't particularly close. Gasol was a more durable and healthy player for his career. So when all the categories are summed up, Pau Gasol takes the passing awards, totals, and playoffs categories, while Alonzo Mourning takes the defense category, with the rest being a tie, giving Pau Gasol the decisive win. Pau Gasol is perhaps one of the most underrated big men of his era, as his presence on the LA Lakers was what Kobe Bryant exactly needed in order to compete for championships once again. As soon as Gasol was traded to the Lakers, they immediately went to 3 finals in a row and won 2 of them. Gasol, along with his brother Mark, have an argument for being the best Grizzlies players in franchise history, and Gasol remains an LA Laker legend as well. Alonzo Mourning is known for being a tough, tenacious two-way player with the Miami Heat. Although he never won a championship in his prime and his career was shortened due to health issues, he remains one of the great 90s centers of his era alongside Hakeem, Robinson, Shaq, Ewing, and Mutombo. I hope you guys enjoyed this comparison. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next comparison video.